Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Power Rangers episodes. So, letting everybody know now, because I just had gone on to adjust it. So, I am to have gone on to have like Power Rangers playlists be much more specific to certain seasons. So, of course, if you were looking just for a Power Rangers Turbo bit of episodes, you can go and find a playlist, all of that. Or if you're really interested in Power Rangers in Space, or Mighty Morphin, or Sub Season, there are all those currently available. There are to be some seasons that I haven't quite gotten to, or there are certain episodes at some point that I haven't gone on and covered a lot of certain shows. So stuff like Ninja Storm has yet to have a playlist, but when I am to, of course, go on and do more Power Rangers episodes, maybe involving Ninja Storm, I probably will then have a playlist with Ninja Storm stuff. But we'll see. With that said, let's go on and let's talk about these episodes. So we, of course, are to be having a theme for these 3 episodes. Come to find out, I had wanted to go on and do kind of like a party kind of theme because it's the New Year's, and it would kind of just be a fun thing to do episodes that are kind of out of the ordinary, kind of like song episodes, or to have like some things that you would probably go on and see at some party. So as far as monsters go, so I was like, all right, like there's something really interesting here that I can go on and just kind of put together here. So with that said, let's go on and let's talk about the Power Rangers Turbo episode 36, the Song of Confusion. Kind of find out both Cassie and a girl named Vicky are to team up to play a song in the juice bar, and it seems they're like, well, you know what, like this went rather well. How about we just go on and just like put together a band? And so these 2 girls are to try to go on and do this audition, and come to find out, it of course to be really hard to find somebody to be involved in this band. And so we find that these 2 girls are to luck out and find a band that eventually Cassie will be connected to, while Vicky is to be left in the cold. So we find that the Rangers in this episode are going to fight 5 monsters that are to all be color-coded. And come to find out, this band and these monsters are to be somehow connected. So with that said, let's go on and let's talk about the Power Rangers Wild Force episode. So for this Wild Force episode, we have it be called Power Play, and this is episode 17. I went on to find that there is to be this karaoke orb or org monster in this episode, so I went on to be really interested in this episode because of that, and then come to find out, I was like, ooh, like this is a Lunar Wolf episode. I was like, all right, like I like the Lunar Wolf Ranger, so I'm kind of like getting 2 things that I wanted out of this. And so really thought that this episode was, as well as the Turbo episode, they're both, I would probably go on and say that they're like solid okay episodes. There might be at a point where people are to state that that whole confusion thing is to be used a lot in this episode, but when you think about it, whenever there is to be a song to be involved in a show, they play it way too often. Look at Jennifer's Body, when you had the one song like Through the Trees, and they're playing that song all the time throughout that whole entire movie, to where it becomes a butt of the joke, where it's like, man, every time you go through the radio, it's just that song, because the band has become uberly popular. So then, of course, we end up going in to the Power Rangers Ninja Storm episode 31, Double Edge Blake. So besides me going on and to have seen the pilot and got my thoughts about that, for this Ninja Storm episode, I feel that like with time I could probably really like this show. Uh, to me, I think that there is like way too many like generals in the show. Like, man, is a show just smothered with a bunch of like side monsters that are always on the show. And I was like, why? Why is there so many? This makes no sense. But we are also to have the way that these Rangers look like very much remind me of like Beetleborgs. So I was to kind of be won over by that. And so, with that said, this episode is to be focused on Blake, as Blake is to seemingly be having some distance from him, the Rangers, because he's to go off and do his own mission, trying to get trained on how to use this weapon. And so, when Blake goes on to get training for this weapon, everybody's like, well, hey, where's Blake? Like, why isn't he here? Like, why isn't he involved? And so the Rangers end up finding out why, but then they want, like, well, hey, we want a better explanation. Like, why do you have this weapon now? So Blake goes on to explain the whole deal of him, of course, getting this weapon from his past sensei. So we go into this story, and we come to find out that like Tori is to kind of be this like nosy neighbor, and because more than likely we're assuming that at some point Tori and Blake are going to be together, because we just kind of find out that like the two of them might have this like attraction by the end of this episode. Because of course I'm not very familiar with Ninja Storm, so I was like, oh, like these two must end up together. So, with that said, let's go on and, I eventually also want to get into Ninja Storm, really just to see the 6th Ranger in this episode, because of course I had gone on and like heard that like the Green Ranger is really cool for this season. I was like, okay, but why? And so eventually I might go on and just kind of watch more Ninja Storm just to see what's up with the Green Ranger. Why is he so cool? So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just get on, all up in these episodes. So, with that said, let's go on into the spoilers, because I think it's that double 5 time territory yet again. To, of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil these episodes. So, going into the order of which that it is to technically be presented here. So, I'm going to go into the Power Rangers Turbo episode, Song of Confusion. So, in the beginning of this, we have Cassie, who's talking to Vicky after they are to go on and sing this song called All I Ever Need Is Love, Love, Love. And everybody's like, yeah! They're rocking out. And one guy's like, yeah. And Stone is kind of looking at all the people in the juice bar. He's like, oh my god, I could make money off of this. If only I was to go on and be like all those other shows that would have both like this whole like juice place, but also this band that's kind of playing in the background. But again, you would always go on and have like the juice bar that would be like renting out space to have like these karate teachings and all this other stuff. Like it'd always be like the youth center would just kind of be like all kinds of things for all kinds of situations. Like we would have like at one point where Curtis would have this like jazz concert and so on and so forth. So anyways, so after Vicky and Cassie are done singing this song, we have them say it's like, man, like this whole like us guitaring and whatever, like, man, like this feels really good. Like I think we should go on and try to see if maybe we can get other band members to be in our band and kind of just see where this goes. So they decide that they want to go on and put auditions, and we of course have Stone that's like, well, hey, yeah, like I'm willing to let you guys kind of use this space to do auditions because, of course, like limited set pieces. So we all of a sudden have Divatox who's telling Porto to get her guitar, and so we have Divatox that is kind of thumbing this riff. So we have Cassie, we have Vicky who are doing these auditions, and we all of a sudden have at first this one little kid with these like thick glasses that is doing this accordion, like and so on and so forth, and like the kid is just like, so like, yeah, how about a no? So we then have a bagpipe person who's going and it's like no. So we have a kazoo person who's like and it's like no. How about a no? So we then have a couple of people that bring in bongos. No. We have one person with banjo. No. A person who is very jazzed about playing on this keyboard. He's like, and they're like, no. We have two guys come in with these cymbals. No. No. How about a no? So we then have Bulk and Skull, who don't know what band they're into, but they're in a two-person band. So Skull is wearing this kind of very gothic, rocker-like vibes. He has a guitar with him. We have Bulk, who it seems is looking like almost like a reggae kind of character. So we have Bulk with this bongo, and we have Skull with this, I think it's like a bass guitar or something. So we have them going on and they're playing, and like none of it is connecting to one another. So they're like, oh my god, like this is the worst. Like, dude, do we have anybody left? So then this band comes in, and they're called Crash and the Creeps. So we have Crash that goes on and plays this song nicely, and the girls like it, but they don't know what they'll do. Confusion. Yeah, it is. Anyways, so we have Cass and we have Vicky who's like, oh my god, like, this is what we need. Like, this is what we wanted. But here's the thing. Cassie and Vicky are to realize that, like, this band already has a bass player and Vicky plays bass. So, like, Cassie is just like, yeah, so, like, are you gonna ditch one of your guys? Or, like, what are we gonna do with Vicky here? And so, like, Crash is like, well, hey, man, like, we're a package deal, and so I'm not leaving one of my guys behind. And so Vicky's like, okay, well, like, I'll just become a songwriter. I'll just, like, help you guys out with music. And Cassie's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then we can probably go on and forget all about you. Because that's what's going to happen in this episode. So we go on to have Cassie, who is in her locker, just confusioning away. And we all of a sudden have TJ, who's like, well, hey, Cassie, like, when is your guys' next gig? And so Cassie goes on and tells TJ, and he's like, okay, great. So the next thing that we transition to see is Cassie and Cash and the Creeps doing this gig, and they're playing the confusion. Yeah, it's great. Everybody raise the roof. So we then all of a sudden, after the gig, have Cassie who meets up with Vicky, and Vicky is to state that Crash won't let Vicky get any of her songs out, and Cassie's like, well, I'm sorry, like, I didn't think that this was gonna happen, besides the time that I just stated that it was going to happen earlier in this review. So Vicky is to just walk away and there's nothing that she can do. So we then have Justin, Carlos, and Ashley that are saying, like, man, your song is a hit. Like, man, Confusion, yeah, this is great. Yeah, I'm getting into it. Yeah. So we go on to have Justin and Carlos leaving this area, and they all of a sudden see that the Piranhatrons are taking every piece of this band equipment and putting it in their van. And Carlos and Justin was like, well, hey, what are these guys doing here? And so all of a sudden the Rangers are in attack mode. They're like, yeah, like, let's take these Piranhatrons out. So Justin and Carlos are to fight. And while the Piranhatrons are being grabbed by Justin, we all of a sudden have Carlos, who grabs this microphone and he starts singing the Confusion song. And even like the Piranhatrons are getting into it. They're like, yeah, Confusion. Like, even when the Piranhatrons are like holding on to Justin, they're like going with the music. They're like, yeah. It's like, okay, even the Piranhatrons are just so into it. They're like, yeah, give me that Confusion. So we have Carlos that stops and realizes that he needs to fight this day. So Justin and Carlos takes out the rest of the Piranhatrons, and Carlos is like, yeah, I don't know why, I just stopped there and I just started to do that. And Justin's like, yeah, I don't get it either. So next up, we just start to see that TJ is in this library, and he's like, I know the words, and he starts singing the song of Confusion, and the librarian's like, excuse me, TJ, I get that you might really like that song, but just don't sing it here. And so TJ is looking at Justin, and Justin's like, I know. Like, that song, it's addicting. There's something wrong with it. So we have to where the Rangers are so distracted by this song that they need to go on and confront Cassie about it. Just kind of ruin her buzz of a song being a hit. Because when they go on and say, it's like, yeah, like, your song is like so catchy, like, I can't get away with it, or get away from it. And Cassie's like, well, that's called a hit. So all of a sudden we have the communicators that go off, and we of course have TJ, who's like, okay, Rangers, like, let's go on and let's hear what Alpha has to say for this day. So we have Alpha 6 that is going on and saying here that Divatox is to send monsters to Angel Grove. So, like, that's an everyday occurrence. We have to naturally assume that that's happening every day. So we come to find that the Rangers make their way to meet up with these creeps. We come to find out that the red creep is to be called Crash, but so the rest of the creeps are just being like blue creep, green creep, yellow creep, pink creep, not cleep. So we have the Rangers that go on and whip out their turbo blades and start to fight with these monsters, and then they go on to use the auto blasters, and that ends up going on to have the monsters retreat, because they're like, man, like, those weapons are big and they're hard and they're long. Anyways, so Rygog, of course, is ticked. Like, hey, why aren't you guys going on? That's my Rygog impression. Hey, why aren't you guys going on and fight those Rangers? And so we've Crash is like, well, hey, man, like, those weapons. Those are some big weapons. So we have Porto that's like, well, hey, I'm going to go on and I'm going to even the odds for you guys. I'm going to give you the Ranger Scrambler. This kind of goofy cannon-looking weapon. So you can go on and take out the Rangers. So the next thing, we have Cassie, who is to start to realize that maybe what the Rangers were telling her, there is some fluidity to that, to what they were stating. So Cassie goes on and is to find that Crash is to start to deliver flyers to people for their next gig. And Cassie's like, well, wait a minute, like you didn't talk to me about this next gig. And Crash is just like, well, hey, like things are just going so well, like we had to go on and put up this next gig. So we have next that the band is to be setting up for their next concert, and we have Porto, we have Elgar, and we have the Piranhatrons there. So we have the Rangers that go on and rush to show up here and are telling the bandmates that's like, well, hey, like, you're with monsters, like, you're working alongside them. Don't you know they're dangerous? And the band members go on and be like, well, like, I guess you don't know how dangerous we are. And so then we get a reveal that the band members are to be the Creeps. So we then go on to have the Rangers fighting against these Piranhatrons. And so we again have the monster that is going on and confusion. Does he know any of the other lyrics? No, he doesn't, folks. So we then have the Rangers with their auto blasters realize that if they go on and they start blasting the instruments of this band, that it'll start to lessen in degree that song has a hold on them. So the Rangers, all with their auto blasters, go on to start trying to take out the weapons as they are also trying to fight these Piranhatrons. So we find that after the band can no longer play this song, they just teleport to the beach. So the Rangers follow them to this beach, and so we find out that the Creeps have all these weapons that they're using against the Turbo Rangers. So we then find that the Creeps are to go and get the Ranger Scrambler and try to use this weapon, all while the Rangers are kind of using a cannon of their own, which of course would be the Turbo Ram Cannon mode. So we have the Rangers going on and trying to wipe out these monsters. And so we have Divatox that is like, hey, launch torpedoes, let's go. So we go on to have the Rangers who are going into their Turbo Megazord, and we immediately just have them go and use this spin blade move and wipe out the monster. And so we then go on after that and have the Rangers who no longer remember the Confusion song. They're even trying to state what the lyrics were, and they're like, I don't know the lyrics. I don't know what it is. Like, yeah, like that's too bad. So we all of a sudden have Cassie who bumps back into Vicky, and so Vicky and Cassie are to try to like mend fences, and Vicky is to state, it's like, well, hey, like, you know what? Like, this band was doing so well that even Vicky was to be, like, singing along with the song. She couldn't get it out of her head. So whatever Cassie was doing, it was successful. So we have both of them that are just kind of talking things out. And we all of a sudden have Bulk and Skull that are like, well, hey, give us a second chance, Cassie and Vicky. Look, we have something here that's going to blow you away or blow your mind or some goofy blowing metaphor. As we find that both these characters are holding on to tubas and they are ing their way into just kind of playing whatever notes that they can. And we have Stone that goes on and is to state this like kind of weird, goofy way to say, yeah! So we go on and we have Cassie and we have Vicky who realize that it's like, well, hey, like the next time we're ever going to put a band together, you know what we don't need? Auditions. So we kind of end the episode that way. So, moving on to this Wild Force episode. So, we come to have our beginning of this episode being taken place in Animarium. If I'm saying that right, it'll be a miracle. And I'll probably have to state that quite often in this episode. So, we come to find that Princess Shayla is to have this weird, goofy dream sequence where she is to be given a necklace by Merrick, and Merrick is to go on and tell Princess Shayla that she is to have to go on into the skies with Animarium, and he has to go on and continue to fight the good fight. He has to fight his mission. He has to wipe out all the orgs. So, we have, while Princess Shayla is daydreaming, going off and just... What was that question that you were going to ask me, Alyssa? Because I could not give a rip. We have Alyssa that is to go on and ask Princess Shayla about how many Org generals there were in the past. And we would, of course, have Princess Shayla that is like, oh, what? Huh? Yeah, we all are glad that Merrick is back. And so Princess Shayla just walks off, and Alyssa's like, that's not what I asked for. That's not what I asked. No, but Taylor all of a sudden is like, huh, like, she's very distracted. That seems unusual for her. So, the next thing that we see is Merrick is to make his way to this bar that I don't have the name of, for once. And so, Merrick is to make his way to this bar and find that there's to be these biker gang characters that are to be intimidating this bartender. So, Merrick decides that he's going to step in and fight against these biker men, forcing them out of this bar. And so we then have the bartender who goes to give Merrick this food because he realizes that Merrick is hungry because he's making the sound of his stomach. So we have the bartender that gives Merrick this Willie's Roadhouse special. So the bartender is being overly kind with Merrick, stating it's like, well, hey man, like, I have a spare room if you want one. I can give you all kinds of clothes and fashion sense, and because obviously you're wearing a robe, bizarrely. I don't know why, but you're wearing one. So we then go on to transition, and so we are to be at the Nexus. Luckily, I know a little bit about Wild Force because, of course, I had seen a crossover between Wild Force and the Time Force Rangers. Score 1 point for Gryffindor. So, we have Master Org that is talking to Jindrax and is to ask him, it's like, well, hey, where is Toxica? Where is your partner in crime? And we, of course, have Jindrax. It's like, well, hey, like, I can be an Org general. Like, why aren't you kind of, like, putting more emphasis on me? Like, why are you just relying on Toxica? And so, come to find out that Jindrax is just going to go on and just make himself useful. So, we come to find out back at the Animarium, we have Princess Shayla that is to all of a sudden notice from the fountain that the fountain is going off like it's nobody's business. And so Princess Shayla is to realize that there must be some Org general threat. And that danger is coming their way. So we have the Rangers who are acting upon this threat, which is really just Jindrax and some putreds. It's like, oh, well, that wasn't all that great. Like, man, that just kind of sucks. Like, yeah, like we thought it was gonna be big business. We thought it was gonna be legit. So we come to find out that it really is legit, as we come to find a monster called Necronomica, which almost sounds like Necronomicon, of course, from Ash vs. Evil Dead. If you know anything about Evil Dead or whatever, because maybe you've seen some horror movies there or two, sounds familiar. So we have Necronomica that comes in here and is to try to take down the Wild Forest Rangers. And so we all of a sudden have Merrick, who is to be talking to this bartender, giving Merrick an exchange of clothes, and is stating it's like, well, clothes say a lot about a man, son. And so we have the bartender that's like, well, like, I think that I have something here that might complete your ensemble. And by the time the bartender looks back at Merrick, Merrick has run off, because he had heard the howl of the Lunar Wolf. Every time the goes off, he's like, okay, I need to run. I need to figure out what's going on. There's an org out there somewhere. So we have Merrick that goes into morphing and is to face off against Necronomica, and is to use his lunar Q. And so we have Necronomica, we have, of course, Jindrax that, like, disappear. So we go on to find out that for Merrick's past, this kind of brief flashback, we find out that Merrick was to be taken care of by a thing called Zennaku. Whatever that means, at some point, if I am to go on and watch more Wild Force, I'd probably understand what the heck that character is. But I haven't, so I shan't know what that character is. So we have the Rangers that are to go back to Enerilium, and we are to go on and hear the Lunar Wolf's Lord consistently make this howling sound, this noise. So we have the Rangers that are contemplating about Merrick and even Princess Shayla. And so we have Taylor, who's coming to the clear consensus that both of them at some point must have been in love. So we come to find that Princess Shayla is to meet with Merrick, and we have Merrick that's like, oh my god, like, I'm so happy that you're still alive, but guess what? I still have a mission. I still have something that I need to do desperately. Because, of course, when Shayla was to have that whole, like, dream wandering off sequence, we had Merrick that was telling Shayla that she needs to go off into the sky with Animarium and leave, while Merrick is to go on and continue to wipe out orgs. Or orgs, yeah. I stated that right. I was like, orbs or orcs? It's orcs. Why don't you know? How many of these things have you seen? Not a lot of them. So we go on to have Merrick, who is to again know that a threat is happening, because Lunar Wolf is going off. So Merrick goes on and he has to leave. So we come to find out that Jindrax again is to send out something else, which of course is to be the karaoke org. So we have the Rangers that are already there trying to fight off both Gindrax and the Karaoke Org. And we, of course, have the Karaoke Org that is doing its attacks and is doing this kind of karaoke song thing and wiping out the Rangers. Merrick comes flying in with this kick. And so we then have Merrick that is like, Wild Axis! Whips out his phone and morphs. And it's to go on and kind of turn into his Lunar Wolf Zord, or Lunar Wolf Ranger, my bad. So many Lunar Wolf things. So, we have the Karaoke Org that is to shoot out these laser disc cutters, this disc attack. And we have the Lunar Wolf that whips out his Lunar Q and goes into Saber mode and starts smacking them away, and it's pretty awesome. Then we have Merrick that is to change into an attack that kind of looks like a very like pool or billiard like attack. It's pretty awesome how they kind of set this up. So we have the Lunar Wolf Ranger where all of a sudden he is to have this kind of like green this kind of green kind of line that goes straight to the monster. And then he ends up shifting his Q into like an actual stick, and he like fires upon these balls, and all of the balls go on to hit the Karaoke Org. And I was like, wow, like that attack was really like unique and fun, and like we were to have naturally assumed that the monster was going to get killed off with that, but it doesn't, because we end up seeing it kind of later on in the Megazord mode. And so we have the Rangers that are just like, all right, like this guy just wiped this thing out. So then we have Necronomicon that is to come back. So we then go on and have Necronomicon, and so Merrick is going on, and he is to see that his Lunar Wolf Sword is like right alongside him, and the Lunar Wolf Sword turns into this cycle. And I'm kind of wondering at this point if either Numerica or I think Necronomicon was to have maybe Putrids with her, because I think there's like a whole sequence where like Merrick is going on and like with his Q just kind of smacking all these things to make his way to Necronomicon. And yeah, I think there are Putrids there, my bad. So he goes on to take all these monsters out. We then have Merrick that is to take the Lunar Wolf cycle and ram Necronomicon, and as she goes on and gets like flung off, we then have the Wild Force Rangers that use their Jungle Sword to do the Savage Slash attack. So we then go on to find out that Necronomicon was actually Toxica the whole time. And come to find out, she stated that when Nazor had gotten destroyed, had gotten killed, she had gone on and been very tempted to steal his crown. And so that's how she was to go on and become Necronomicon. So we go on to find that the Karaoke Org is to, again, to be put out to make it grow. So we then have the Predator Zord and we have the Wild Force Megazord that go on to face off against the Karaoke Org. And so we had, weirdly, the Wild Force Megazord that takes this like Armadillo Zord. It's used it as this kind of like kicking like thing, as if like the Megazord is playing soccer, oddly enough. And we have the Rangers that go on and use these attacks to take out this monster. And we had the Predator Zord. He also uses both Crescent Boomerang, and he also uses the Predator Wave, and that's what really wiped out the Org. So after that, we had Merrick, who is to walk off, and the rest of the Rangers were like running, but like, well, Merrick, wait. And so like, well, hey man, like we should like finally just team up together. We should be together. And Merrick's like, well, hey, like I'm willing to work with you guys, but like that doesn't mean I'm gonna be with you guys. So they finally was like, okay, like that's good enough. So it seems that Princess Shayla is to have gone on and quickly made up a coat for Merrick. And so the Rangers are like, well, hey, Merrick, like, here's your coat. Here you go. So Merrick puts on this coat, and he's like, all right, like, I'll wear this coat, because I guess Princess Shayla had gone on to make this coat. So that ends that episode. Now on to the Power Rangers Ninja Storm episode. So in the very beginning of this, we come to find ourselves in Storm Chargers. So we have Tori that is talking to Blake, and Tori's like, well, hey, do you want to go out and you want to do something? And Blake is like, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy. And Tori's like, oh, really? Okay. So we have Tori that's talking to Shane. It's like, well, hey, like, what do you think he's doing? Like, what? It's like freaking Tori is nosy as F. So Shane is just like, well, maybe whatever it is it's just some secret. Like, maybe he doesn't want to tell you about it. So we all of a sudden have Tori that is to see that that Hunter is to come in. And so Waldo. Anyways, we go on and come to find out that he is trying to get new tires, new sand tires. And so we have Tori that is asking this guy, it's like, well, hey, like, do you know what's going on with Blake? And the guy's like, well, no. And like, all I know is that he's busy. So I was like, yeah, okay, all right. So we have Tori that runs off, and he's like, well, don't you want to hear about my new tires? No. So we have Tori that runs out of the store to see that Blake is running off with this girl in this car. And so it's like, okay, who's the girl? And there's no real explanation. So next thing we end up seeing is Luthor. And we come to find out that Luthor is on the Luthor layer ship. Interesting enough name. But so we all of a sudden have Luthor, who is watching every single defeat that they would ever have, because I guess they had finally gotten the box set of the Power Rangers Ninja Storm on Blu-ray and DVD. So they're like, hey man, we gotta watch this. Like, man, like that episode, I was really cool in that episode. I nailed that line. Wasn't that great, guys? Yeah, it was great. Yeah, all right. So Luthor is going on like, why are we watching all of our past failures? This makes no sense. So we come to find out that the bright idea of this was taken from Mara and Capri, which those names are what they are. So they're stating that when they were to go on and look through this old footage, that they were to have a plan. And so we have Luthor is like, well, I have a plan too, and it's to get both of you girls as far away as possible from the Power Rangers. And so we come to find that Luthor is summon this cage around both of them, and the generals are like, ha ha ha, yeah, suckers. So we find that Zurgane has a new recruit, and that new recruit ends up being Inflatatron, this balloon elephant looking monsterish thing. And so we of course have Luthor that's like, okay, I'm won over by this monster. How about Shimazu, you go on with this monster and go out and just kind of fight the Rangers, because like you really need to kind of earn some stripes for me. You really need to earn some respect from me. So they both go off together. So we go on to have the Rangers that are getting an alert at Ranger Ops that that of course there is the infiltrator kind of on the loose, wreaking havoc. So they're starting to ask, like, well, hey, where's Blake at? Shane asks Tori, it's like, well, hey, like, where is Blake at? And Tori's like, I don't know, like, he barely even said hi to me, so I don't know where he is. And so we have Shane that tells Cameron, it's like, well, hey, like, you go on and you find where Blake is. Like, we're gonna go on and we're gonna have to fight this monster. So we go out there and we have the Rangers meet up with Infiltron, and we have Shane that tries to attack this thing, and he ends up getting his hand hurt, his hand injured. So he fails miserably. So we have Shimazu that's like, yeah, all right, things are working out. So we have the Rangers that are to whip out the Thunderstorm cannon, and all of a sudden that, of course, is when Blake shows up. And he is right in the way of their targeting radius. And so the Rangers are like, hey man, like, you want to move? We'd like to shoot the monster, please. It's kind of like Ghostbusters 2, where Ray gets like right in front of the painting, and Peter's like, hey, could you move? Like, we're trying to shoot the monster, please. Like, Ray. And then we find out that Ray had gotten possessed by Vigo the Carpathian. And so, yeah, so we get that moment here. So we all of a sudden have Blake that is to be like, wait a minute, like, I'm assessing something, I'm analyzing something. So Blake goes on and is to take out his Thunder Blade, which is his new weapon, and he starts to attack this monster. And so both the monster and both Shimazu decided, like, dude, we're peacing out. We're getting out of here. Because Blake had gotten really close to this monster and almost had blew up his balloons. So they're going to backpedal. So back at the Luthor's lair ship, we have Luthor going on and talking to Shimazu, and he states, is like, oh man, like, we almost had him, but like when like Blake was have that new weapon and fighting Inflatron, and he had that pointy thing, so Shimazu was like, yeah, we needed to regroup. So we all of a sudden have like Zurgang that is coming up with his plan. We all of a sudden have all 30 of the other generals that are all coming up with their plan, and like it seems because there's too many of them. So we have Luther, who's just like, man, we have too many generals and not enough foot soldiers. Like, you guys can have all the plans that you want for days, but like we only have so many uh like things that we can do and put out. So like you guys got to go and you do something. Like you yourselves, like don't tell somebody what they're gonna like. Just do it yourself. Just go out there. So all the while we have Vexicus, which I was like, man, Vexicus looks pretty freaking awesome. Easily, I'm just kind of won over by this like shark monster. But like, here's the thing: if a Power Rangers show would set up where from like the head villain all down, like if every single one of them had like the coolest visuals of every single one of them, I would always just be like, man, like this show is amazing. There is always a problem with me for a Power Ranger season. There's always some problem with visuals. There always is. Where it's just like, meh, uh like I don't like the way that their chest piece looks. Oh, I don't like how their uh like their costume is. Oh, I don't like it's always some cosmetic thing with a lot of things where it's just like, man, they have this like amazing headpiece, but the rest of the like body down is just garbage. But anyways, so there's a lot of crappy looking villains. There's always a lot of hodgepodging of just like, why does this villain exist? How is it that all these are to be put together and have it all like make sense? Because a lot of seasons, I would love it if the villains had this kind of uniform like look, or it all just kind of like how we would go on and have demons and have like the demons all kind of like they all like looked like they all like it made sense that they were all together, or uh we would go on and have uh just certain other themed monstrous things, and it would all just kind of just work. But anyways, moving on. So like I think Time Force like kinda worked as far as villain side goes. Anyways, back in the show. So we have Inflatron that is to be analyzed by the Rangers. And so Cameron is analyzing this monster. It's like, well, yeah, I think I understand this monster's weakness. And so now we go on to have Shane that's like, okay, Blake, you need to explain me like how you got this weapon. And so Blake goes on to explain that this weapon was given to him by Sensei Amino, and that he is to have gone on and is to have gotten training for this weapon. And so we have Blake that goes off on his own to again seek more training, and Tori follows him through this kind of catacomb, or this kind of like area, just consistently going through all of these hallways and these places. And I was like, what this seems like the eating up of time for this. It seems like a eating up of episode. So we find that Blake is to make his way to meet up with this woman for them to fight together, and Tori is to go on and try to attack this girl who is attacking Blake. And so, come to find out, this is the person that Blake is training with, and she's Leanne, the girl that Tori was to see earlier. And so Tori's like, oh, okay, as Blake goes on and needs to actually have to explain this now. So Leanne had, of course, been with the Academy before, and like somehow they kind of met up, and she was the only person who has gone on to fight with one of these Thunderblades. So like Blake is getting training from her. So all of a sudden, we have these Cell-Jacks or Cell-Zacs that all of a sudden appear, and now Leanne, Tori, and Blake are now all fighting them. It's like, well, hey, like I didn't expect this to happen. It's like, well, yeah, you never expected. So we find Motodrone and Zurgane and Shimazu that are all together, and we have Motodrone that is asking, it's like, well, hey, like, what are we doing here? And we have Zurgane that is like, well, hey, like, we're waiting for the Rangers' demise. And because all three of them are going to go together and attack the Rangers. And so we have Cameron that is to tell the Rangers, like, well, hey, like, there's another threat here. So they're getting the mobile command center together. They're driving it out to the location of these three monsters, and we have the red, we have the crimson, and we have the yellow ranger that are all going on to face off against these three monsters that I had already just named. They are to, of course, be in their Wind Ranger Tsunami cycles, or in Crimson's case, the Thunder Ranger Tsunami cycles. So they come in on these cycles, and so we have Motodrone that jumps on to the Yellow Ranger cycle and starts fighting him. We have Zurgane that attacks the Crimson Ranger on his cycle with his dual katanas. And we then have Shimazu that jumps on the Red Ranger cycle, and the Red Ranger is to realize that, like, Shimazu is trying to, like, hit him with this blade, and the Red Ranger is trying to figure out a way to kind of block it. So we have Luther, who's watching all this happening, is like, oh my god, like, the Rangers, like, they're getting taken out. Like, this is great. And so Luther is tempted to put out the Infiltrator, or Infiltron, to go out, butcher the monster character. The monster is going out. So, and Luther is just, he's happy as a clam with his plan. So, we have Vexicus that is going on and stating in the back, he's like, he's gonna make his move soon. It's gonna happen. 12 years from now, it's gonna happen. Like, wouldn't it be awesome if we have a monster in the very beginning of this very beginning of a Power Ranger season? And I don't know if this is going on with Vexicus or not. That he might just be a man of just many words and not much action. So if we go on in the pilot episode and have a character like Vexicus, who is stating that he's going to go on and he's going to take out those Rangers, like, you watch, he's going to do it. And then we go throughout the entire season and he does bubkiss nothing. But then on the final episode of the season, we finally have Vivicus who attacks these Rangers and takes them out and wipes them out. And then we have to go on to the next season with, like, man, that guy finally, he was like, I'm coming up with a plan. I'm going to take out these Rangers. And then he finally does. And then we have to go on and get new Rangers. We have to get new Morphers. We have to get new whatevers. Wouldn't that be interesting to just kind of see how that played out? So we have Cameron that is to be communicating to Blake. It's like, well, hey man, like since you have like two people fighting off just minion characters, like I'm gonna send a cycle out for you to get to that monster. And we of course have Blake who's looking at Tori, and Corey, and Tori's like, go, 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 go. So we have, of course, Blake is to get into his tsunami cycle, and we have him go out to the monster, and we have Blake this time around using this weapon, the Thunderblade. It's not working this time around. And so Blake is like, well, why is this not working? Like this is a new weapon. So all of a sudden, we have Blake who's getting a flashback from his sensei from the past. And he's telling him, it's like, well, hey, control your anger. And Blake's like, yeah, I need to focus. And so we then are to go on to go back to the three monsters and the three other rangers on their cycles or wherever they are. So we have Shimazu, and so the Red Ranger knocks him off his cycle. And we then go on to have the Yellow Ranger who kicks Motordrone off of Motordrone's cycle. And we then have the Crimson Ranger that is to turn his cycle into a glider, a ninja glider. So all of a sudden, the ninja glider goes on to blast all three of these generals at the same time, and the generals all disappear. It's like, all right, like we beat the generals. So now we have what is left of the Rangers all making their way back to this monster. And so we have Blake that is getting this flashback about Leanne and Sensei Amino. And so Blake is like remembering something. But the flashback, it doesn't seem, is to have much of any tie of when Blake is to go on and re-meet up with Leanne. So we go on to have Blake that through that flashback to realize that he needs to improvise. And this weapon is to be a good weapon to be able to do so. So, what of course Blake does is he breaks this weapon in half, and one of the halves he chucks at the monster, and the other half he goes on and is to swing at the monster and smashes into the monster. So we have Luther that's like, okay, I know where this is going. So he ends up going for this device that is called the Personal Alien Manager. PAM. PAM! And so he hits this button on PAM that is to whip out this scroll of empowerment, which was like, oh wow, that's like a really cool idea to like do the gigantic mode of a thing. And so I was like, all right, I was kind of won over by that. Because like you're always wanting to think of a way that the Rangers could morph and have it really be unique and interesting. And eventually, I think they've kind of like ran out of ways to morph and have it be a new thing. To the point of it almost seeming like all the morphs kind of seem similar or familiar or whichever. You could also go with like the Iron Man route. You could just have all like the pieces that are just kind of like somehow like falling into place for the Rangers, and you could do it that. or you can go on and just have like a magic spell being done, and like you could do the telephone booth thing, where all of a sudden like the person goes into one thing and then comes out the other as a ranger. Like you could always do that. But anyways, so we go on to then have the Rangers that need to Megazord it up. So we have the Storm Megazord and the Thunder Megazord that are to come to fight off this threat. And so we all of a sudden have the Mini Zord that comes out, and we then see the Thunder Megazord, which is like, I'm like, you know what, this looks pretty sweet. Like this combination between the two Zords actually looks pretty cool. I like that kind of just head or that chest piece. Like that thing was pretty sweet. But overall, like the color scheme, like the gold and the yellow was just like, it kind of reminds me of like the, God, what was it? The one Zeozord, or it kind of reminds me a lot of like the Zeozord, the original Megazord. I don't know. It is what it is. But so, all of a sudden, we have the Infiltron, or Inflatron, that is to take the Zord and is surrounding it with balloons. And so, all of a sudden, the Zord lifts and pop, 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 and it falls. And I was like, wow, that's a really cool attack. That's a really cool thing that they did there. I was like, wow, like, bravo to whoever just thought of that and how they did that. That was great. So, next up, we find that the Green Ranger is using a Lightning Rift blaster. And he is to kind of play his tune to call for the mighty Mammoth Zord. And so, with the powers combined of both the Mammoth Zord and the Thunder Megazord, which Thunder Megazord, we've kind of heard that in the past, right? It's been a while, but still, like, we've heard that Thunder Megazord. So, just realizing that because I've seen some Mighty Morphin recently. So, we, of course, go on to have this monster that gets wiped out again. So the next thing that we see is that Blake is talking to Leanne about helping ninjas come back to the academy, because of course, since their sensei is gone, like they need to find somebody to come back to. So after that, we have Leanne and Blake, and they're seeing Tori, and so it seems that Leanne is looking at Tori. It's like, well, hey, like this girl, like she must be really interested in you. And so Blake is like, well, yeah, that's what I kind of like about her. So Leanne leaves, and all of a sudden Tori and Blake start talking. And so the more that they talk, it seems that they are to have either already had this relationship or already going to go into one. And because Blake says that Tori is cute, that's a cute thing about her, as she used to go on and apologize for her being a little bit too nosy. And so Blake is like, no, that's okay, that's fine. So that's, of course, how they wrap up the episode, with it seemingly being that Blake and Tori are going to be together on this beach, and it just kind of finish up this episode. So with that said, I think I'm going to go on and finish up. Under an hour! Isn't that great? It didn't take me an hour and a half this time around. Maybe because these episodes were slightly easier than normal, because normally I've done a lot of crossovers or big episodes, and I would have to take forever to go on and explain things or just make jokes. Not a whole hefty amount of jokes in this one, but I guess a good enough variety of them. But anyways, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, buddy. Bye, buddy.